Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of MMT Monday. This week we're going to debunk the often used neoliberal fear-mongering tactic about Social Security going broke. How many of you have heard the claim by some politician that Social Security is going broke and it probably won't be around by the time that you reach retirement age? This overused claim is used to help foster the myth that our nation's debt is a problem. Politicians have just accepted this as a status quo because to even think about questioning it would be political suicide. But here's a surprise for you. Even the people's champion knows that this is just false. Now, I'm not talking about the great Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but the self-acclaimed president of the people, Donald Trump. In former President Trump's own words, we see that he realizes that the U.S. is its own currency issuer. So we will never have to default on our debt.
I mean, these people are crazy. This is the United States government. First of all, you never have to default because you print the money. I hate to tell you, okay? So there's never a default.
Okay, now that sounded crazy to a lot of people. First of all, I hate to tell you, you print the money, okay? So there's never going to be a default. First of all, these people are crazy. This is the United States of America, okay? We print the money. I hate to tell you, there's never going to be a default. And people went crazy, and the Wall Street Journal wrote articles saying, right, this man cannot be trusted. Forget the nuclear codes. Like, he can't write anywhere near the Oval Office, because that is crazy speak.
In our first video, Dr. Stephanie Kelton destroys this overused myth by explaining that despite former House Speaker Paul Ryan's best attempts at fear-mongering, Social Security mathematically cannot go broke. The U.S. government cannot run out of dollars, period. This means that it can always make Social Security payments. There is no possibility of it being unable to meet those promises. It's just not possible. And it's not just Donald Trump, but Warren Buffett and former chair of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, saying the same thing. They all use the same exact words, using the same exact language, in the same exact framing.
It wasn't crazy when Alan Greenspan said it, and it wasn't crazy when Warren Buffett said it, and it wasn't crazy when the St. Louis Fed put it in their reports. The exact words, in the exact language, with the exact framing, coming out of Buffett's mouth, Greenspan's mouth, and so on. Nobody called them crazy. All he's doing is saying what everybody else has readily admitted, okay? Which is that the United States of America has a sovereign currency, that we, as the federal government in the United States, is the monopoly issuer of the dollar. That the currency itself is a simple public monopoly, that the dollar comes from the U.S. government and can't come from anywhere else. And if you think about what that means, the implications of that are that you quite literally can never run out of U.S. dollars, that you cannot be forced by markets into defaulting on obligations in your own money, because after all, the U.S. dollar can only come from the U.S. government. You and I try to create it. It's called counterfeiting.
In this next video, we will see an example of former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, spewing out the stereotypical excuse for why we must have entitlement reforms to keep Social Security solvent. Ryan blames Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and interest on the debt for being drivers of debt. Now, this is the same Paul Ryan who didn't bat an eye while repeatedly providing corporate welfare for the wealthiest Americans, all while gutting Medicare and Medicaid, that resulted in stripping access to health care away from millions of lower-income Americans. His fondness for Ayn Rand's philosophy of selfishness only further highlighted his disdain for the poor or anyone who relied on federal benefits to survive. Ryan epitomizes the neoliberal austerity hawk's heartless approach with his attempt to morally justify his gutting of the social safety nets by labeling people as makers, i.e. people who work and earn good incomes, and takers, i.e. perceived lazy people who subsist on government assistance.
Do you consider it possible to arrive at a fiscal policy and plan that reduces the deficit without touching Medicare and Social Security or military spending?
No, you can't. It's just a mathematical impossibility. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so the fact checkers may get me, but by, I think, 2026, according to CBO, roughly all revenues coming to the federal government will be dedicated to interest on the debt, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And that means everything else is borrowed money. It's a function of the aging of America, health inflation. And so if you do not tackle the drivers of our debt, which are entitlements, you cannot balance the budget in the future and pay down the debt. It's just not possible. So I think it's important that we recognize this reality. And by the way, the sooner we do that, Jerry, the better off everybody's going to be, and the more we can do it on our own terms as a country, meaning, such as the proposals we've all advanced here in the House Republicans, is not touching the benefits of people in or near retirement so that we can guarantee that the promises that were made to them in retirement are kept promises. If we keep kicking the can down the road, watching the situation deteriorate even further, then unfortunately one day we could get to a point, if we have another blown presidency where we don't tackle these problems, where you have to cut benefits in real time for real seniors. We don't want that to happen. We want to prevent that from happening. And the best way to prevent it from happening is to fix and restore these programs, make needed changes for those of us who are younger so that we have something for us when we retire, and so that we can guarantee the promise to current seniors who have already organized their lives on these promises. You cannot tackle the debt crisis that's coming in America if you do not fix this entitlement problem.
Furthermore, Ryan's attempts at cloaking his disdain for lower-income people under the guise of protecting these programs from bankruptcy only serve to highlight this hypocrisy. This hypocritical and heartless view of not only his constituents, but people as a whole only serve to show a complete lack of understanding of how federal spending works. The hypocrisy being that he was the Speaker of the House of a Congress that passed trillion-dollar tax cuts and a $700 billion military budget, but also wanted us to believe neoliberal debt fear tactics and accept devastating austerity. As we'll see in our video tonight, it is completely unnecessary when we understand modern monetary theory, as Alan Greenspan explained to Paul Ryan when he was under oath before Congress. I hope you enjoyed the dumbstruck look on Paul Ryan's face as much as I did.
So having personal retirement accounts is another way of making a future retiree benefits more secure for their retirement. And also, do you believe that personal retirement accounts as a component to a system of solvency does help improve solvency? Because when you have a personal retirement account policy, it's accompanied with a benefit offset. With that feature in place, do you believe that personal retirement accounts can help us achieve solvency for the system and make those future retiree benefits more secure?
Well, I wouldn't say that the pay-as-you-go benefits are insecure in the sense that there's nothing to prevent the federal government from creating as much money as it wants and paying it to somebody. The question is, how do you set up a system which assures that the real assets are created which those benefits are employed to purchase? So it's not a question of security, it's a question of the structure of a financial system which assures that the real resources are created for retirement, as distinct from the cash. The cash itself is nice to have, but it's got to be in the context of the real resources being created at the time those benefits are paid, so that you can purchase real resources with the benefits, which of course are cash.
So a few things. I love this group. A few things. First, that is not the answer Paul Ryan is going. Let's just get that straight. That question was teed up so beautifully. It was a single sentence with the words personal retirement accounts 4 times used. It was like, I cannot make it more clear to you what I'm hoping you will say. Just say, yes, we should do this, right? And instead, Greenspan under oath says, I wouldn't say there's anything insecure about the way the system is set up today, in that there's nothing to prevent the federal government from creating as much money as it wants and paying it to someone. Quote, okay? How many people have told you, future retirees, that your Social Security benefits are secure? Nobody. I'm guessing everyone has told you that your benefits are in jeopardy, that the system is going broke, and that it's probably not going to be around for you. And if it is, it's going to be a whole lot less generous, and it's probably going to be private and not public guarantees, insurance, private insurance rather than public guarantee, right? I mean, that's what you've been told. Here's Alan Greenspan saying there is nothing to prevent the federal government from making good on every promise to every future retiree, their dependents, and the disabled, on time, in full, in perpetuity. There's nothing to prevent us from doing that. Boom. So the affordability question is off the table. He's removed it. We don't have to talk about whether we can afford it. But then he goes on to make a really critically important point, and this is the debate we should be having. What does he say next? He said the question is, how do you set up a system which ensures that the real assets will be created, which those benefits are employed to purchase? You might notice I've seen this video a few times. I can quote the whole thing. How do you set up a system that ensures the real assets will be there? What does he mean? He means we have changing demographics in this country, and in so many countries around the world. Demographics are changing, and they've been changing for a long period of time. There are going to be fewer people working and producing stuff in the future. Baby boomers are moving out of the workforce and into retirement. So they're not going to stop consuming, right? So there are going to be fewer people working and producing stuff. And the question Greenspan is asking is, how do you make sure that when you send those benefit payments out on time, in full, in the future, that we are a productive enough economy, a productive enough society, that there's enough stuff for everybody to take some of it.
Alan Greenspan's upcoming response is a bombshell of truth that makes a very important point. We can give an unlimited amount of money to anybody. That's no problem. But what matters is that the economy has the capacity to produce the real goods and services that the people receiving the money are going to buy. In other words, we can give all the money we want out, but we had better make sure that we have enough money, enough houses, enough energy, and whatever else those people will use that money to buy. If there isn't enough, then we'll get inflation. Dr. Kelton concludes the video stating we shouldn't be having a fight over where to find the money to fund Social Security, but rather, what can we invest in today to ensure that we have a prosperous and growing economy for the next half century?
What are the kinds of investments that we could be making today to make sure that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, the U.S. economy is as productive as it can possibly be, right? Should we be investing in infrastructure, in education, in research and development? What is the key to raising future productivity growth? That's the debate, that's the fight. And they should be having a fight, no problem having politicians take different viewpoints and argue and fight, great. But fight over the right kind of stuff. We shouldn't be fighting about where we're going to find the money. That's a wrong question. That's the wrong fight to have. Who's got the better policy idea for ensuring future growth of a prosperous economy so that there's enough stuff that we can take care of everybody without creating an inflation problem, because inflation is the constraint. So that's Greenspan's point. You know, if we don't have a nest with lots of eggs, then we're all going to be fighting over the same one, and it's going to create an inflation problem.
As you can see, the argument that Social Security will go broke is about as asinine and overused as the argument that federal taxes fund spending. Yet that won't stop the perpetuation of deficit hawks raising the issue of the so-called Social Security problem each time the elections roll around. This is usually followed by a call to raise taxes or cut benefits to those who rely on Social Security payments to survive as some sort of solution. Dr. Kelton proposes a more just and equitable solution. She proposes that the solution is to invest now to build more factories, repair, and expand our infrastructure, increase productivity, and whatever else we need to do to ensure that the workers of the future will be able to produce enough goods and services for the retirees of the future to consume. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check our website out at realprogressives.org, as well as checking out any of our many channels on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, and Rockfin. Thank you and have a great week.